all things Halloween. This is hauntformer, and I just recorded a long rant-like video, a positive rant, about the classic Universal Monster movies, specifically the 4 crossover movies: House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. And I recalled that 3 out of the 4 of those movies featured Glenn Strange as the Frankenstein monster. To celebrate Halloween, and to celebrate these classic monsters, I wanted to bring you a special treat for the holiday. Today, in honor of a kind of a sad thing, which I'll talk about in just a second, I want to show off to you this, which is the House of Frankenstein officially licensed from Trick or Treat Studios Glenn Strange Frankenstein Monster mask. I don't think that there is a Halloween icon as iconic as the Frankenstein Monster. Yeah, you have the Headless Horseman or Michael Myers or other characters who may be more or less popular depending on who you ask. But the Frankenstein Monster is one of those monsters. There's fuzz on him, maybe from his hair, I'm not totally sure. But there are those few characters that have stood the test of time, and the Frankenstein Monster is one of them. Now, technically, the monster didn't look like this in Mary Shelley's book. It was a very different design, and in fact, he talked, and the book is very different than the movies. But this look that started with the original Frankenstein movie from James Whale, but eventually kind of morphed into its own type of character, was depicted by a lot of different actors over the years. I mentioned Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. Lon Chaney Jr. also played the monster, and, of course, Glenn Strange, who was featured in Houses of Frankenstein and Dracula and the Abbott and Costello horror comedy. What makes this mask special in a lot of ways is that depiction, but also the sad reality of something that just happened this year. Trick or Treat Studios, well, actually, there's a lot of stuff on him I'm noticing. Trick or Treat Studios is actually doing away with their Universal licenses. Now, there are some of the monsters that will be spared from this, because technically the Wolfman and Phantom of the Opera and a few of those are owned by Chaney Entertainment, and a couple are owned by a couple of other different entities, but largely, like the Frankenstein masks, Creature from the Black Lagoon, those type of characters are going away. Apparently there was some kind of lawsuit or legal dispute about the licenses, and we're no longer getting these masks. So this is the last Halloween where you can get this mask. This one, the Boris Karloff version, I do believe The Mummy, Creature from Black Lagoon, I believe Wolfman, Phantom of the Opera, Dracula are spared because of Lugosi and Chaney Entertainments kind of saved those 2, or 3. But other than those, these Universal Monster masks are going away, well, until they're eventually remade. There was a previous House of Frankenstein mask that was made back in the day, I believe by Don Post Studios, but this is the most current version. I have to say it's a really impressive sculpt, sculpted by Justin Mabry, who is like the president of art design or something to that effect at Trick or Treat Studios. We've gotten and shown off his masks here before. It's just nice to see another great sculpt. And, you know, people always are like, well, Frankenstein Monster always kind of looks more or less the same. And while that's true, bolts in the neck, flat top head, I have to admit that this is substantially different than the Boris Karloff version. First of all, right away, you'll notice the color is gray, and the hair has little bits of green in it, which is kind of interesting, even though it's a black and white movie. It just has a different facial structure. The eyes are a bit more lazy, not as opened. And this was kind of that era where the Frankenstein Monster was barely in the movies, and he just kind of walked around with his hands out. Fun movies. Fun movies. I highly recommend them, and I love the stitching up here on the head, the bolts, the little, the cuts and gashes, and there's a mole on him. I didn't realize that that was even there. It's a good mask, quality-wise. You can see the little Mabry sculpt there at the bottom. There are a lot of people that complain this mask is a bit tight, and while it is a little bit, and it could maybe affect the vision, I'm a bigger guy and I can still fit in it relatively comfortably, so you should be okay, but if for nothing else and you just want to display it, I think that's perfectly fine too. Man, I love the Frankenstein Monster. I love to share this stuff around this time of year. It's a great time of year, and even when Halloween is over, it's never a bad time to talk about classic monsters. Thank you so much for watching this review, video, history, whatever, and remember, for all things Halloween, this is Hauntformer.